We are the imaginal cells of the butterfly that's emerging from the dying caterpillar. The old paradigm is dying.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon. I'm the Vice President of the Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact, and this is Making Contact, a forum. This is the third installment of a forum where we discuss where are we going, what is diplomatic contact with ETs, who are they, all sorts of topics of philosophy and reality. And if you don't know about the Alliance proper, the Alliance is an organization that has basically it's a network of organizations that all strive to eventually have open official diplomatic contact with an extraterrestrial civilizations. And so that's our goal around building an embassy and lots of grassroots work. And we have fantastic leaders and individuals around us that are doing amazing work all around the world. And so today, this Making Contact is a bit of a follow-up of the first two. The first one was about why or how should we have diplomatic contact with extraterrestrials. So very factual, it's like, is there a reason to do it? And we concluded that absolutely, there's definitely a reason for it. Not only that, but it's the theme around, or the conclusion around that forum was, we need more love. We need more love in humanity. We need to love each other. We need to unity. Beautiful. And then we explored with Preston Dennett, we explored, well, is there evidence of presence of extraterrestrials on planet Earth? And he wrote 28 books on the subject and illuminated the fact that there's been presence and proof of ETs on Earth for thousands of years, and a lot more in the recent years. So this was very exciting. Now, in this installment, as a follow-up to those two, okay, well, what do we do now? As a humanity, if we know we've been visited for thousands of years in the way we've been visited, and there's reason to have formal contact, well, that's pretty amazing, but what do we do? So today we have three fantastic guests to discuss this. We have a guest that will come back, Costa Macraeus. He's the leader of ET Let's Talk. I'm going to introduce him a bit later. We have Michelle Anderson, a leader of many projects, including Disclosure Fest. And we also have Scott Kanamas, who is doing so many things I can't count, but he is predominantly, I suppose, the love coach and also the host of Saturday Night Live and many other things. So we'll have a discussion about what now together. Okay, so first, what I'd like to do, I'd like to invite Costa to come forth. Well, wait, before we talk to Costa, we had a brilliant suggestion from our dear guest, Michelle, to center ourselves in harmony with ourselves, with the universe. And she's going to lead us into a little thought exercise and meditation. Michelle?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be with all of you. And this recently came to me by way of Brian Besco of Twisted Sage. And I loved it so much. I thought, I want to start implementing this on my radio show and getting us in this place of open-heartedness before we do anything, any discussions or anything. So what I'd like to do is invite you all to breathe, this is a 3-breath, open-hearted meditation, I guess you could say. So if we can just first place our attention on our physical hearts, that spark that's inside each one of us that connects us with all that is. And then if we can close our eyes Take a deep breath in. Feel that energy coming from Mother Earth all the way up your feet, all the way up, traveling up into your heart and merging with that spark of light in your heart. And then on our second breath, if we can visualize the energy from the sun, from source, from creator, coming down through our crown, traveling down into our hearts and meeting with that energy of our heart. And now on our third breath, if we can breathe in to our heart space and just visualize and feel connected with all that is, the merging of Mother Earth with Father Sky in our hearts. Thank you. How's that feel? How's that feel? Open-hearted?
Feels amazing, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope
It's
people
kind of
are...
hard to come back and speak after that because it's like we're...
That's why we do it really quickly. Just a quick, I find myself doing it a lot before I have a phone call, or, I just really want to be open-hearted and heart-centered before every conversation or any endeavor that we're undertaking. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's wonderful. It's opens the heart and the mind, and now we're ready, right? So I would like to start just by introducing Costa here, Costa Macras. He went on to earn his bachelor's degree in Indiana in computer science when he was a young man back then. And as such a young man, he became fascinated with the mysteries of the universe, teaching himself astrology, meditation, astronomy, and reading widely about the extraterrestrial UFOs, comparative religion, spirituality, Atlantis, and many other metaphysics topics. Costa has enjoyed a broad and successful career as a software consultant to many Silicon Valley companies. He is the founder of ET Let's Talk, a network of 100,000 peaceful groups and individuals from 100 countries and more, who meet up at CE5 teams once a month to make coordinated, interactive, and united contact with loving, peaceful ET civilizations. So the question stands before you, Costa. Mm-hmm. What do we do?
Thank you for that introduction, Sylvain, and for bringing us together. This is a fascinating topic, and I'm glad that I met the Alliance for ET, because we need to be talking about this issue and the others that you mentioned. So what do? We know they're here, they're clear, get used to it. And my part in that has been my mission at etletstalk.com and the People's Disclosure Movement and the People's Love Alliance, because it's my belief that we as humanity need to be preparing for this inevitability that these star civilizations will make a much closer approach than just the lights in the sky and the occasional, not occasional, but probably underreported one-on-one contacts they have with many on Earth. It's going to come in a mass way at some point, and we need to be preparing for that, because I really believe that our spiritual evolution is leading us to becoming cosmic humanity. Now, what I'm interested in is, and I have been for the last 15 years, in creating movements that are helping us as humanity to prepare. And that's what I really believe we should be doing. We just can't wait, wishing and hoping for the day that maybe there's mass landings and whatever, and that you flip a switch and everything's right with the world. Humanity still has a way to go. And that's what the People's Love Alliance, that I'll talk a little bit more about, is focused on. But before that, what preparations we're taking are part of the People's Disclosure Movement. And when I founded that in 2010, it was with the idea that we teach each other, create groups, create a movement where everyday human beings are using protocols to connect directly with our star friends, bypassing governments, bypassing the usual cover-ups and lies and distortions that we've been used to for 70 years, and taking back our power from them and using our own power and that of the people that we find as we grow our movement organically to make our own direct contact. So that's what I'm getting at. This is what's important right now, is to establish one-on-one and in groups our own direct contact with our star friends. I have to say they are very eager and joyous. They've said so in our peaceful reaching out to them, and they're ready to work and to co-create a golden age with us, to be mentors. I do want to say that what's important as we have created this People's Disclosure Movement, which, by the way, has more than 1 million people in more than 100 countries who are, again, doing this disclosure, which I'm told we actually tipped the point in 2019, so that we can never go back now. The word is out, the cover up really is over, because we the people have made so much contact on our own with our star friends that nobody can ever cover up their presence again. So what do? Let's establish relationships. They told me in 2010, when I created the People's Disclosure Movement, that we should not look upon them as gods. We should instead consider them as elder brothers, sisters, and cousins who want to work with us in order to bring about the day when they can be fully in full open contact with us on Earth. And the point of that would be to share their spiritual evolution, to share their technologies, and to help us create the future, which is a golden age that we can have if we really want it. So that, and by the way, I do want to mention that the Earth is more ready than many of us realize, because recent research shows that 1.3 billion people, that's billion with a B, not only believe in intelligent star civilizations, that they exist, but that we should be communicating with them. So the ground is seeded, the fertile ground is there. There are enough human beings on Earth whose heart is open, whose interest is there, who have open minds, and who need to be reached and taught to form individual relationships and group relationships with the star beings. That's what I think we should be doing. We have members of all stripes in our People's Disclosure Movement. Some of them are already downloading from their star friends new inventions that will benefit life on Earth, that will feed us, that will heal diseases we have, that will teach us how to get along with one another a lot better, et cetera, et cetera. So we have really the whole cosmos to gain. And that's why I'm excited about this, because it's up to us individually and as a large group of human beings interested in this to bring all this about. You know, we have the power. Finally, I'll say that it's not just good enough that we're reaching out to them and they're reaching back, but it's also important for our spiritual evolution on this planet to get along, to create right human relations. And that's what the People's Love Alliance is about. My star friends have told me that in 2019, 1 billion human hearts were open enough that they could work with us, and small ways and big ways to create more love on Earth. And so this People's Love Alliance is not getting any press in that way, not from the mass media, which relies a little bit too much on scare tactics and other distractions. But we should know that we're really not alone. There are 1 billion hearts, people all over the world who are working at every level of society in every country to establish the values of goodwill, love, right human relations, etc. And I'm sure that Scott can talk a little bit more about how there are techniques for many of us learning how to communicate better with each other so that we have a more stable, peaceful planet that is inviting to our star friends. So it's a twofold process. It's the People's Disclosure Movement reaching up to make that connection, and it's also the People's Love Alliance that is bigger than any of us imagine, which is teaching us to reach horizontally to each other and to establish peaceful relations with each other. Because as long as we're willing to kill someone for the wrong color of their skin in our minds, then how are we going to accept a lot of cosmic societies, which many do look like us or similar to us, and many probably don't? So we have to work on ourselves and create that stable, loving environment so that we can have the cosmic work with us. And that's the basic thing that I believe that we can be doing right now. We're preparing to be cosmic humanity, and I think that we're going to get there. And if I may put in a little bit of advertisement, I invite people who want to be part of the People's Disclosure Movement and the People's Love Alliance just to become free members at etletstalk.com, because the power is in our hands and we need to be using it right now and with a lot of love. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I thank Sylvain again for the opportunity to talk about what activities we should be doing in preparation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Costa. We'll be putting the link of the ET Let's Talk and also other links from coming from our guests inside the description of this video, so you can go check out the different websites. And so our guests will mention what they're into, their website, their different approaches, because we do need multiple approaches that appeal to different people at different stages where they're at to build this new world, right? So fantastic. Thank you so much, Costa. Now, this is one aspect, Costa's version or perception of the topic, but we have two other guests that have their own voice about this. And the second guest is Michelle Anderson. Michelle is a radio personality. She's a producer, an MC, a speaker, and a mentor. She has been facilitating gatherings for those seeking spiritual connection and conscious collaboration for over 15 years. She creates unique experiences for people to connect with the dolphins and whales, facilitates group journeys to sacred places, and mentors those on the awakening path to connect with their true eternal essence and grow their soul. She's an avid supporter of Indigenous communities. Good for you, I love that. And regularly supports events that lead people back to nature, peace with each other, and our galactic family and Mother Earth. Michelle is a host on Awakening Code Radio at kxfmradio.org, producer of the Star Ancestor Space at disclosurefest.org, and is a passionate MC for conferences, webinars, and festivals that focus on unity and love. She has been a popular speaker, MC, and guide at conferences such as 1111 Star Knowledge, Conscious Life Expo, Contact in the Desert, Portal to Ascension, Cosmic Awakening, Harmonic Convergence 2020, Imagine Peace Conference, One Love Fest, Festival of Goddesses, Green Valentine, and Sister Giant, Laguna Beach, and has been featured in Lana Marconi, PhD's film, New Human, New Earth, New Humanity. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle. Now, so the same question goes to you. What does humanity do now? What, based on the reality we currently have?
Just brilliantly said. Everything that you shared, I resonated so strongly with. Thank you for bringing those messages through and for really walking in your sovereignty and in your beauty. I think the Indigenous would call that walking the beauty way. And I witnessed that in you. I have for many years on the sidelines, because this is really the first thing we've ever done together. And Scott, thank you for introducing me to these fabulous gentlemen. You know, I do feel that contact has been made. And when we talk about, you know, preparing for contact, I think we're preparing for the next level of contact. I don't know if many of you are familiar with Barbara Masiniak wrote a book called Bringers of the Dawn, and she identifies with the Pleiadians. And there's many, many people that have been talking about the contact that they have. I'm friends with someone named Elizabeth April, who meets with the Galactic Federation of Light, and gosh, Adam Apollo. These are people that have been speakers at these conferences that I've emceed and hosted. And they bring through a lot of messages from our star brothers and sisters. But the one that I really want to honor right now is Chief Golden Light Eagle, who, oh, Scott, I saw you touch your heart, and that makes me get a little teary-eyed. They call it dropping his robe. He dropped his robe in July of last year, and he was an incredible man who's still working with many of us from the other side of the veil. And he started the 1111 Star Knowledge Conferences back in June of 1996. He wrote this book. I don't know if you can see that, the symbols, the universal symbols and laws of creation, a divine plan by which one can live. And I don't know if you can see some of the symbols on there. But when he did his first conference in June of 1996 in South Dakota, he had many indigenous elders that had messages from our star brothers and sisters. And he also found that many people from the CIA, the FBI, NASA, all the alphabet agencies showed up to South Dakota to hear him give these messages, and they were curious. And what he told me was they were curious about this, how he came by the symbols, because the symbols were found at the Roswell crash. So my feeling right now is really, I want to follow up with what Costa was talking about, that getting into our hearts is the bridge. It really is. And that seems to be a universal message that's coming through from all of the people that are doing the channeling, from other dimensional beings that come through. The common thread that's weaving through all of that is that there is no other. We're all united in through this heart space. There are different life forms that are, we talk about light versus dark, or benevolent versus anybody that might be malevolent. And I think a lot of people that do believe in other races wonder about that. It's definitely something that comes up a lot in our circles. And what I feel is most important is to unite through our similarities rather than dividing through our differences. And if we're always coming and speaking with each other, we talked about this before we started recording. If we're speaking with each other as if we were telepathic, what would that look like? What would that feel like? Sometimes people come together and say one thing, but we feel with our hearts, we feel that the energy coming through, maybe not exactly what the words are being spoken. And I think we're all being tasked right now to consider that, to amp up our discernment. Because I do encourage people not to just go out there and start making contact with, inviting in just any being into their essence, because you might get more than you can handle, in terms of what's coming through. The veils are very thin right now. But I did want to share some photos that my friend Lisa Tinney created, just to have people kind of connect with. If you see that, this is a Venusian female, and she has these cards, and she tells a little bit about each one on the back. But because Costa, you were talking about the different beings. Can you imagine if this being was 6 feet tall and appeared before you at the foot of your bed? It might scare you a little bit, because we're not used to seeing praying mantis beings that tall, or, communicating with us in person in that way. And I do have a lot of friends that communicate, and I call it being overlit by the praying mantis beings. This is an Arcturian being. So, and the reason why I'm doing this is just to have people kind of connect. This is, I think he's from Sirius, a Syrian being, and feel the energy from each one of these beings. And for some people, it may not resonate at all. And I'm not attached whether it resonates at all. But when Lisa showed me these, I really felt a connection. This is a Pleiadian a Pleiadian female. I really felt a connection with some of these beings. And as a matter of fact, my husband, who always says to me, I'm not into that alien thing, which I don't use that word myself. That's not his vibe. He's not really into that. Does he believe in that there are other life forms? Absolutely. But he's not into it in the path that I have taken. But we were at a retreat in Mount Shasta for the Venus transit in 2012. And Lisa brought these out. This is when she gifted these to us. I can't believe that was 2012 and how long ago that is already. And as she was showing these images, and we were all, gathered around looking at these images and going, oh my gosh, we were connecting with them. My husband looked over at one of them, it caught his eye. And he said, he almost turned white, to be honest. It freaked him out a little bit. He looked at me and he said, Michelle, I've seen that one in my dreams. And it was the Arcturian female. And when Chief Golden Light Eagle came to our house for the first time, he said, wow, there's so much Arcturian energy here. Now, there have been times where he was at the conferences and he would ask people, who they identify with, like where do they think they come from? And he would have them raise their hand. He would say, are you Pleiadian? And people would say yes. James Gilliland introduced me one time as an incarnate Pleiadian spreading bliss energy on the earth. I'll never forget that he said that, because I had no idea about that when he introduced me on his radio show. That was his interpretation of the energy that I was carrying with me. But when Chief Golden Light Eagle started talking about all these different systems, I was really feeling like, I feel like we're all of those, that rather than separating even further, again, I really feel like we should invite each other to consider that we're all of that, we come from this creational energy that's inviting us to realize the oneness of life and how we're connected with each other, with the earth, with the stars, with the animals, with all beings and all life forms. And once we really start adopting that knowing, and we really let that land within us, think about how we'll treat our fellow brothers and sisters, not only on Earth, but in the cosmos, when we're seeing them face to face. I did have an experience. I had an experience in my bed where I've had it twice it's happened, where they came to my bedroom and they showed up. The first time they looked angelic to me. It felt very angelic, and I'm a feeler. I feel very deeply. So there was an energy signature there that was very angelic. And I was 5 months pregnant, about close to 5 months pregnant at the time. And I didn't know the sex of my child, but they didn't use their mouth to talk to me. And they were on, next to me on my bed. And they told me I was having a girl child, and to name her the name I was given at birth, which is Nikki Lee. And I woke my husband up and told him, oh my gosh, we're having a girl and her name's Nikki Lee. And she was due on my 30th birthday. So that was the first encounter I ever had where they came to me and visited me in person. And then the next encounter I had was many years later, where they came as Native Americans and told me, again, no mouth, just telepathically. They said that they were preparing me, that I would be working with a lot of chiefs and indigenous people to help unite them, because a lot of them were fractured and fighting among themselves, whether, their creation story might have been different than another's creation story, or they may honor the owl, or in some instances they think the owl brings death, so they don't want you holding owl feathers. And there's a lot of different rituals and rules that are different with all the tribes, but the underlying message was to bring everybody back into peace and harmony. And the only way we'll have peaceful contact with our star brothers and sisters is when we have peaceful contact, we make peace with our own families, our own friends and communities, and we make peace with the earth. We make peace with the earth herself. You know, when we come into right relation, that is the beauty way. So I think that that's a good message, a good message to bring through. And I would like to read, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but this is before we went on this call, I opened the book and I said, Chief, what would you have me share on this webinar? And it came up with Chanupa, 2 trees, empowers respect for all my relations. So it looks like a channeling. It says, 2 trees is my name. I am here to share the sacred tree of life. All the relations of Mother Earth are part of her sacred tree. Dawning the top branches of this tree of life are these 7 stars, creators and guides. All evolution of Mother Earth and these 7 stars are flowers of different colors, specific scents, and an essence of life. And it goes on. I'm not going to read the whole thing in interest of time, but this is under the spiritual law of equality. And I think we kind of started in that way. You know, Costa, you let us off talking about, you know, coming into right relation with each other. So I'll leave it there for now.
I think that's wonderful. The message of, I guess you can qualify the universal unity, where there is infinite differences, yet none at the same time. At least that's the way I express it. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And that is you. I'm so happy to have brought you here so you can deliver that. That's super important to me. So I will now introduce our third speaker, Scott Katamas. A little introduction for Scott. He's a writer, director, and producer of educational programming. And as such, he won multiple Emmy Awards and reached millions of people through his productions. Scott worked with many leaders in the New Thought field, including Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Ram Dass, and many more. In 1994, Scott was hired as a segment producer for The Other Side, a daytime talk show on NBC. He helped initiate the television careers of people such as Daniel Brinkley, Deepak Chopra, and James Van Praagh. Scott went on to become a supervising and senior producer for shows such as Strange Universe and The Paranormal Borderline. Over a 7-year period, he produced over 100 nationally broadcast segments on a wide variety of topics related to UFOs, ETs, etc. He personally interviewed 8 former astronauts and 30 military and government officials. In 2001, he shifted his attention to his work as a master love coach and led over 1,000 workshops throughout the world. He started the Love Coach Academy, training other coaches in his unique relationship style. When the pandemic hit, Scott immediately put together a full slate of free online programs with his senior love coaches. He is also partnered with longtime friend Deborah Giusti to create Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe. That's how we met. A wildly popular online inspirational variety show that currently reaches 50,000 people per week worldwide. Through the Love Coach Academy, there are currently a dozen weekly online shows happening, supporting people through the challenges of this time in history. He also hosts Straight Talk on Friday night and Sacred Sundays with Scott and Friends, which are very popular as well. His newest online endeavor, which I just became aware of last week or 2 weeks ago, is called The Awakening World, which is seen by thousands each weekend and brings powerful luminaries together. And a little note, he wrote to me, he also lives in Northern California with his 2 beloved dogs. I found that interesting. It would be part of a biography. But I think this is you, Scott.
This is me.
So the floor is yours. What do we do as humanity now?
We go inside. We turn our attention within. It's so easy for us to get distracted with external phenomena. And that's fun. it's fun to wait for ETs. It's fun to go out on an ET watch. It's fun to look out in the sky. It's fun to go to a basketball game. It's fun to go to a baseball game. It's fun to go to a movie. It's fun to do these external things. And ultimately, we are here as individuals to wake up, to become conscious. And like Michelle and Costa so beautifully said, we have to open our hearts, and we become loving, compassionate beings through self-reflection, meditation, and our own inner work. I've had a pretty interesting career. As you mentioned, I've interviewed a lot of former astronauts, a lot of experiencers, and I've also worked with a lot of spiritual teachers, and ones that I really respect. And pretty much what I've come to realize is that this is a dream world. And each of us are having our own individual dream that's taking place within a collective dream. And how it all works is far greater than our little pea brains can imagine. Einstein and maybe a few at that level can kind of comprehend it. But if we recognize that we each are having our own individual journey back to oneness, back to cosmic consciousness, every spiritual teacher basically says the same thing, only in different ways. That we all came from one consciousness, we're all returning to one consciousness. But we each have our own unique journey to that place. And sometimes that journey includes really hard stuff. It might include cancer, death of loved ones, failure in life, great disappointments, great disillusionment. I've done a lot of near-death experience documentaries and television shows, and recently live online events. And almost every single person, when they're out there having a near-death experience, the greatest commonality is the meaning of life. Whether it's Jesus showing them the meaning of their life, or their dead Uncle Fred showing them why they've got to go back and still learn their lesson, it's always a variation on the same theme. I'm here to learn to love, starting with myself. My dog is agreeing with that. I'm going to say it again. The meaning of life is I'm here to learn to love, starting with myself. And we each have our own unique pathway to learning how to love. And again, that includes the challenges that we go through. And at this time where we are deluged with so much media input, how bad is the barking? Is the barking? Yeah, it's okay? Okay, great. When we're deluged with so much media attention, and we're living in these echo chambers, so people who believe that you've got to get vaxxed, and if you don't get vaxxed, you're evil, or getting more of that feedback. And likewise, people that are like, hey, I want to have control over what I put in my body, are equally upset, and they're getting all their feedback about how vaccines are killing people. Now, I'm not here to say one way or the other. I'm here to point out that we're living in a time where if you just take in data that you're being fed, you're going to get lost. And you might get lost in serious self-righteousness, serious judgment, serious make wrong of others, and going into enemy images. And basically going to war with people who think differently than you do. And we're all seeing it. I'm sure we've all, watched friendships or even marriages that have gotten destroyed because of different belief systems, whether it's Trump is great, Biden is evil. Trump is evil, Biden is the answer. The election was stolen, it's the great lie. And whatever you choose to believe, it's very easy to then think that whoever believes the opposite is an idiot or worse. And so it's really important for us in waking up and looking to this imminent connection to other consciousness, to being welcomed into the galactic family, we have to grow up. And we're living at a time in which our planet, the planet will be fine, by the way. I don't worry about Mother Earth. She's been around for a long time. Humankind as we know it has only been on the planet, if you scale it to a full year, the last 11 minutes of December 31st is how long we've been on this planet. But clearly we have created tremendous climate crisis, and we've been living in a very unsustainable way, and we have to change that. We have to wake up. So in order to be ready to come into the galactic family, in order to really be ready as human beings, we have to wake up individually and collectively. And so the events and experiences that people have are part of their archetypal journey. And so it's important to look at what your experiences are. Don't make a religion out of it. Don't make anybody else wrong that's having a different experience or a different belief system. We've got to get really curious. And we've got to open our hearts, and we've got to open our minds, and we've got to listen to each other, especially people that are having different experiences, and not get lost in our interpretation, and certainly not fall into the trap of judging someone who has a different interpretation, but to be like little children, just wide awake with curiosity about, wow, what's going on? What's going on? Wow. So bringing it back to this topic to conclude, where I was going is we all have to be curious. We all have to be open. So when the dog is barking, when the neighbor is barking, when your husband is talking about something you don't believe, when Trump is on the TV, or whatever it is that bothers you, right? Slow down. Don't go into judgment. Go into discernment, close the window, close the door, turn off the TV, make choice. But we can make choice without judgment. We can choose, including the experiences that we want to have with ETs. I just did a wonderful interview with Elizabeth April, and she talked a lot about that because she does have amazing connection, but she hasn't always had wonderful connections. When she was kind of new to it all, she had some very abusive connections because she was just like, wow, yeah, I want to connect. And then she's had to learn how to set boundaries even with alien beings. So learning to set boundaries is very important. Learning to discern is important, but we don't have to judge or make somebody wrong when we're setting that boundary. How's that for timing? So that's kind of my thought, is for us all to open our hearts, open our minds, and be as curious as we possibly can be, and practice loving compassion, starting with ourselves. Remember, we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you, Scott. And thank to your dog. That brought an entirely different conversation kind of out of it. And it's extremely relevant. Like, I agree with you guys. Entering into the discussion part of the forum after 3 wonderful presentations. And we already started because I think we want to discuss, I think, more than present. Animals are also us. And you both touched on something that is really close to my heart, which is the unicity, right? The concept that just because we have a certain shape, certain color, certain level of intelligence or ability to understand our universe and whatnot, it doesn't make us superior or inferior to anything or anyone. It just makes us different.
Yeah,
that's it. So since I have a background in biochemistry, I often talk about trees and plants as the comparisons, and a lot of people they're confused. Or how do you compare people to plants? Clearly, they're entirely different things. Well, yes, we're different things, but is the tree next door more different to me than me and Michelle? Well, me and Michelle are similar, more similar shapes, and we can speak in the same way and so on. But is the tree less or more conscious? Is the tree inferior to us? And those are questions we have to ask ourselves, and probably the answer is no. Just different. Same with the animals. Because I think in all three presentations, what I could feel and hear is, so what we need to do as a humanity is look at ourselves and change ourselves. Sure, I think there's some actions we can do that can facilitate collaboration, right, and moving forward, and learn how to be together and how to be ourselves, like kind of an objective, like a goalpost where we can kind of move towards. But all three of you seem to say, hey, but the big work is really internal. It's really us changing how we see the world, how we see the universe, how we see ourselves, to be forgiving, to ask questions, to be curious, right? And to feel the love and to listen and so on. These are all things that I've heard for all three of you. So I'd like to open the floor to more discussion about that, because that's the real stuff we need to talk about. So I'd like to ask you, Costa, what are your feelings right now about all this talk?
I'm happy to be in such alignment with everything that's been said here, that when you boil everything down, yes, it's an inner journey, and it doesn't do any good to have the riches of the world here if inside, you haven't done the work, and you're a wounded human being and not a complete one. So I fully want to affirm what has been said here, that the work is within ourselves, because once we take care of the love within ourselves, everything will be reflected out as a mirror in the world anyway. And so it's the greatest challenge, I think, that faces us right now, how to love. And as Scott was saying, loving ourselves is the perfect place to begin. And then everything else will flow out. It becomes so much easier when you realize that you are one with everything, to love, again, with discernment. And I thank Scott for that, because it's important to keep that in mind, that while we're in this kind of yin and yang world, that we have to be careful what energies we deal with. And discerning is certainly part of it. What I wanted to ask you, Sylvain, about like the plans with Alliance for ET, in terms of the embassy that you're going to be setting up, which I hope does come to fruition, and that it's a diplomatic success in the ways that you are planning. Now, diplomacy is something that we relegate to the part of governments, or some kind of structures that we built that will have their own rules and protocols and ways of dealing with our star friends. And that's fine. But at the same time, where I'm coming from is, if at the grassroots level, how is it that what can we offer as people to the idea of the embassy? The embassy is, like I said, is a formal kind of thing that might be reserved for official meetings and pronouncements and treaties, I don't know what. But the energy that has propelled and is propelling right now our contact with our cosmic friends is really one-on-one. It's people-powered in our millions. So how can we as people be part of what the Alliance is planning? Where do we plug in, our suggestions, our visions, our ideas? I'm sure you've thought of that, but it's not something that I've asked before, and yet it comes up right now as we've been talking. And I'd be happy to hear, your thoughts on that, assuming that I've made myself understandable.
Yes, of course.
If I asked the right question here.
Oh, thank you, Gus. I'm going to take only a few minutes for this, but it's a very important question, because on the surface, the Alliance's mandate of building a physical embassy and changing diplomatic protocols attached to the Vienna Convention is very dry, very political, very yeah, it's only a certain subset of humanity that deal with that, like diplomats and leaders and things like that, what we call leaders in the normal world, so to speak. That is true. But a little bit like we were talking about before, humanity kind of needs sometimes an objective, something they can hold on to, right? So a building is a symbol, especially if it's a building that we know what the rules are, because we know what an embassy does, right? We know how it works because we have embassies already between nations. So building an embassy is, in many ways, is a way for us to get organized around an objective and a willingness to do something beyond it. Because building an official embassy for ET means at the UN, so public, they say, hey, I think this is a great idea. We should make sure that there are rules for when we have formal contacts with another civilization in the same way as we have formal contacts with other nations. So it's kind of brings that conversation at that level. When it gets to that level, it means that most of the world will be talking about ET contact at the dinner table, right? It's going to be part of the news, going to be part of and that step, though, when the UN or diplomats are willing to come together to talk about changes to the Vienna Convention and those technical things, that won't happen without popular support, without a strong popular desire for it to happen, right? And that's where all the rest of the work, the one-on-ones, that's where it happens. That's where that's important. All the the meditations, the CE5s, the petitions, the conversation, the telepathy that happens between different individuals in the context and the conversation that issue from that, it kind of socializes the idea that we're not alone, that there's other people that are watching and they're peaceful and they want to meet with us, and all these things kind of melts away Hollywood's idea of what an alien is and what they do and why they come here, and all this stuff, and it kind of changes the narrative, and ultimately it changes things at all levels, including in our level of governance. Now, Ian, let's say 10 years from now, because things are moving really fast. We talked about it just before starting the recording. Things are boogieing quite fast. We don't really know what the United Nations or leadership or anything are gonna think on who will be in those positions in 10 years. We may end up with people that are much more open-minded and willing to talk about such things than we have now. The onus is on us to actually change that, to have those individuals awakened and aware and unafraid to talk about these differences. So I see this whole transformation of humanity as multi-pronged effort. The Alliance and the Embassy Project is not the central monument. It is just a piece of a very big puzzle, right? And some people really attach themselves to the idea of an embassy, a physical space. Other people don't care about such things, but there's other things that they can do to build themselves. So that's how I see it. And that's how and why we energize around the alliance. And that's also why we are not creating an alliance where we have membership organization, we have supporting organizations, right? People that support us, we support them, and we move and we share and we collaborate and we exchange, and we each on our own way are building a different part of paradise together for humanity and towards the galactic civilization contact and so on. And within that effort, we are building ourselves. We are building what I say typically, we're by striving to building an actual physical embassy, we actually are building the embassy inside us. And that's the more important part, not the physical building. Once we build that building, because that's easy, building a building, we already have the money. It's not even a financial thing. That's easy. But when we're able to build it according to proper criteria, we'll have most of the population of the planet more awakened and more ready with embassies built inside them. And that's the main goal. That's where we're going. And that's what you're doing, Costa, a lot, and Scott and Michelle. That's you're building embassies inside people's hearts, right? Making them aware and understanding, still with critical thinking and all that stuff. It's really good. So let's talk about more of that. Like, you guys have all sorts of really amazing activities. Share, Michelle.
I just love where this conversation is going, where it's bringing all of us and what we're able to open up to talk about. When Scott talks about doing the work within, I don't know if you're familiar with the Mayan calendar and the teachings of the Mayans. I started recently working with a woman who I had on our show, Awakening Code Radio. Her name's Mariella from MayanKin.com. And one of the things she does when she does a reading is she looks at your age. When you're in the Mayan calendar, when you turn 52, it's like a reset. 52 years, earthly years old. It's like a reset. So I am above that age. So she takes your age minus that 52 to get where you were at, what energies were present in your life, and what you may be working through in this second part of your life. Today, I had an opportunity to do that with one of my dear friends who had some stuff come up for her yesterday, and she said it was making her feel really crunchy. The energy was very intense for her, and the feelings that were coming up. And I asked her if she was familiar with this Mayan calendar. And we took her age, we subtracted the 52, and I said, where were you at 5? What was happening with you at 5? And she told me a bunch of things that went on with her at 5, with her mother being pregnant and having all these brothers, and she was taking care of these kids. And I could tune in and feel the energy was one of, doing all this work and maybe not being appreciated, or, feeling left out. And this comes up for a lot of us because we're working through some of those childhood wounds. And I'm so glad that was brought up, because I'm talking with a lot of people these days who are carrying a lot of those wounds. And I know my husband and I went through it recently, especially during this last 2 years. It really did give us the opportunity to go deep within and to do our individual work, like, to bring up those childhood wounds and how we were triggering those in each other, and how we're going to move forward individually and as a couple. And I think that's helping to prepare us for more of this contact with beings who, I guess I would say, need us to be at that level, need us to be at this level of awareness where we're self-aware, self-loving, and we're coming into, like you talk about so beautifully, all 3 of you beautiful men. I'm just loving feeling your open-heartedness and feeling how important each one of you is carrying that flame in your heart for the unity that we're all talking about. It's not just a word, it is a feeling, it is an action to be unified with each other. And I was really disappointed when I saw how people were turning on each other in these last 2 years. It really brought me down. Scott knows, Scott and I have had a lot of conversations about how hurt I was feeling watching people that I love fighting among themselves and pointing at each other and shaming and blaming. And I felt so fragile to witness it. And then, when it would come up for me, a judgment would come up for me, and I would have to step outside and say, oh my gosh, I'm doing exactly what I don't like. So I think we're all being given the opportunity to do that, and do that quickly. You mentioned how time is speeding up. It's very important that we get right with ourselves quickly so that we can usher in this new age, this golden age. Prophecies talk about it, and they've talked about it for years. Chief Phil Lane is another beautiful Indigenous chief that I have the honor and privilege to work with and call brother. And one thing that he continually says is, the hurt of one is the hurt of all. And to carry that forward, remember that.
Beautiful. Thank you. There was no words after this. I was looking at the panel. It's like nobody wanted to talk because that ends that thought. But we're not done yet, because I do have a question for all three of you that emerged from everything we're talking about. I was putting myself into the shoes of somebody that is not as connected as we are, and we haven't been in this area as long, and kind of trying to put myself in those shoes, listening to us talking about what are we doing, what should we do, and as a civilization moving towards this beautiful possible world, right, with where we do have contact with other civilizations. And it came to me that we may need to tell them about, well, what are the tools? Because, okay, building the embassy inside us and unity and all these thoughts, great, but how do we get there? How do we do that? Many people don't have any means, don't understand, or don't have any tricks or tools or anything. How do you go from where you are now to a place where you are more enlightened and where you can see the world differently, where you can be constructive inside the world and leading into that other age? So opening the floor to this, perhaps Scott, yes?
Yeah, I'd like to tackle it first, if I may. I'd say for anybody, no matter where you are in the path, starting with self-love. And in really embracing self-love, we then have to look at, where are the places in my life where I don't love myself, where I shame myself, where I judge myself? Where do I run the I am not fill in the blank enough story? I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too black, I'm too white. And most everybody has that going on some level. And then what happens is, when we're shaming ourselves, or when we live in a certain quality of shame, it keeps us, we contract, we hide, or we cover the shame up in any number of ways. We cover it up in ways that are very hurtful sometimes, alcoholism or addiction, or less obviously hurtful, like, 12 hours a day on Facebook. And I'm not making any of those things wrong, okay? I'm just pointing to what is human nature to do in our culture to cover up our shame, our lack of self-love. The more that we can heal that and resolve it, and oftentimes it takes working with a coach, working with a therapist, certainly surrounding yourself with healthy, loving people, making sure that you're spending some time being of service. That's also very important. When we are of service to others, we feel better about ourselves. When we're looking outside of ourselves to fill the hole, to fill the gap, it's the black hole of Calcutta. You can never fill it. You fill it. My mentor, Marshall Rosenberg, had a beautiful quote. I'm paraphrasing. He said, the greatest joy in life is contributing to the well-being of others. The greatest tragedy in life is not knowing that. Isn't that beautiful? Right? And so be of service to others. Learn to love yourself. And then the byproduct is that we begin to awaken. We begin to see the world differently, right? We're not hiding. We're not putting on a show. We're not diffusing or distracting ourselves. We're more available when our hearts are open and our minds are open. So I would say that's the most important overall first step. And then there are many ways to practice self-love and to practice that. And I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleagues to share what they want to share.
What I'd like to say is, following on that, absolutely, that's where it starts, Scott. And I think we are all blessed to be living at a time, and we have to give this, its due. Living in a time when there are so many teachers available, literally at the click of a button on a phone, wherever it is that you electronically connect yourself to the world. We are lucky enough to have many awakened people who are willing to teach us, to help us take that next step. And that wasn't always the case. There was a time, even before the internet and before that, when a person was in a village and might not meet someone all their life who they needed to meet to open up, to learn self-love. But that's not the case right now. And I just want to underscore the fact that we have a lot of help. And I might add that's it's not only human help, but what our star friends have said is they're available as mentors. When they've said to me and to us, we are family, they mean it. And they mean that in the same way that you might want to reach out to an elder sister or cousin who's been along the path a little bit more, and you have questions and you need some help to learn to love, they may be able to help. And so our cosmic friends are offering their kind of help in that way, so that they can help us help ourselves. So this is a wonderful situation to be in. Lots of human help in a horizontal way, lots of help from the stars. As long as we're willing to do a little bit of work and open up and try, I don't think we can fail, and that's the blessing of this time. And, we know that we got to find those kinds of blessings wherever we can, because there's a lot going on that can bring us down and depress us. But at the same time, we have to look at that opposite part and realize that there is more light being beamed on this planet right now from many sources than has ever been beamed in its history. And all we have to do is begin the step to ask, go within, ask for help. It will come.
I did that recently, Costa. One of the things that I love about your website, Costa, is you quote a lot from other positive messages. I can't remember some of the names of the different organizations that you pull from to put on your website or on your Facebook page or something, that just bring you into that place of loving acceptance and positivity. And piggybacking on what you were talking about as far as asking for help, I know I alluded to it a little bit in the beginning about how sad I had become. So sad that I felt my spirit leaving me. And I thought, I didn't know if I could hang out and go through what I was watching happen. It was getting so intense. And I remembered, wow, I need to ask. And I just threw it out there to the universe, place me in the right place at the right time with the right people for the right reasons, so I may live and serve my divine mission on earth. And that opened me up. I used to pray that prayer every day, and I had quit praying it. I had quit speaking it aloud to the universe. And next thing I know, my gosh, you invited me to be on this. And I was like, why are they inviting me? I was thinking of all the other people, all my other friends that I think would be so deserving to sit here with the three of you to deliver this message. And I had to do what Scott was talking about, come into what part of myself I wasn't loving, thinking I wasn't worthy to be here with all of you. So there's a lot of course correction taking place. And that asking, I'm telling you that living in that frequency of trust, when you can ask our cosmic brothers and sisters for this help, and how instantaneous the help is coming in droves. I talked about this the other day on my radio show. Riding horses makes me feel free. I love connecting with horses. I call them the dolphins on land, because they place me in my heart. They place everybody I know in that place of joy and wonder. And it's that childlike state. You know, when you're riding on a horse, you just feel so free. And I don't own a horse. And on New Year's, I said to my husband, I really want to go back and ride horses. Can we go to that dude ranch and ride some horses? 2 days later, I was taking a hike and I came across a man on my hike. I've done this hike for 22 years and I've never come across anybody that happened to have two horses, both saddled, and one rider because the other rider no-showed. And I met this man who's now a friend of mine, John. And I heard him talking to somebody and saying, do you want to ride with me? Because my friend couldn't come today and I have both my horses and the lady couldn't ride with them. And I just overheard it. And I just raised my hand and said, I think you're an answer to me putting out a prayer to the universe that I really would love to ride a horse. And he asked me, when was the last time you rode? It was a year ago, but I love horses. They tend to love me. And I think I'm safe. And I got to ride a horse and I met a new friend and not just him as a new friend, but two new horse friends as well. Sunshine and Macho. So that's how it works. It works. We just have to ask and love ourselves. Know that we're worthy.
Being worthy of life, universe, our connections to it, perhaps.
Yes. And what a gift it is to live on this beautiful planet. We were gifted this planet. Look at the jewel that we are living upon with her oceans, her rivers, her lakes, her streams, her forests. You talk about plants and trees. Talk about the connection that we have with the redwoods and what those giant redwoods teach us. They came through and healed me when I had the flu with my husband and my daughter. We all had the flu years ago. It was like 2013. And they told me, if you come to us, we will heal you. Come to find out, their root system goes so deep and they connect with each other and they heal each other. And after we left that sequoia, that redwood forest, just spending 3 hours in that forest, we got in the car and I said to my husband and my daughter, I don't have any sniffles anymore. How do you feel? They weren't sick anymore either. Think about that. They produce more oxygen for us than any other tree. So I'm glad that we got to talk about that as well. Someone once told me the redwoods were a gift from Venus.
Thank you for the specific examples you gave, because I think it's important that from our life experience, it's what we have to offer about asking for help. Not only were those delightful stories, but they were proof that ask and it shall be given. So perfect.
Well, since we talked about stories, there was a story that came into my consciousness as a result of something Michelle said earlier. And because Greek, I don't know that many Greek people, but I'm half Greek, and obviously, Costa, you're my Greek brother. So I'm going to share a story that I haven't ever told publicly. And it was inspired by something Michelle said earlier, but also by having my Greek connection with you, Costa. So on my father's side of the family, Papu was my great-grandfather who originally came over from Greece. And when he came over from Greece, he was a Greek of Russian descent, and his full name was Nicholas Alexandrovich Katamerjanopoulos. And at Ellis Island, they changed it to Katamas. So my grandmother, Evie, was pregnant with who turned out to be my Aunt Helen. But it was a very bad pregnancy, and there was a lot of concern about whether the baby would be delivered and whether my grandmother would make it. And so the whole family was gathered in Brooklyn, where my family lived. Obviously, this is long before I was born. And everybody was praying and really worried. And there was a knock on the door, and my father, who was around 8 years old at the time, went to the door and answered the door. And there was Papu, who, by the way, had died 20 years earlier. But there was Papu with his famous hat on, dressed perfectly. My father just kind of opens his eyes because he'd never even seen Papu. He'd only seen pictures. And everybody gathered and everyone saw Papu. And Papu just said, I'm here to let you know that Evie's going to be fine. She's going to have a baby girl and everything's going to be okay. And we're just going to, and then Papu disappeared. I've never told that story publicly. I haven't thought of it in quite a while. But I think it's beautiful because, of course, it's similar to the story that Michelle told. And the point is that mystical things happen. Now, luckily, my family did not create a religion out of the resurrection of Papu. I wasn't raised in the holy Papu, Papu is Jesus, none of that. Nobody tried to make a big interpretation of it. Phenomena happens.
Yeah.
Phenomena happens. And when we try and make a religion out of it, or even try and understand it, or try and create a belief system around it, we miss the point. It's phenomena. It's here to wake us up. It's here to remind us that things are greater than we can see, that life is more magnificent than we can possibly imagine. And let's just keep opening our hearts and opening our minds, opening our hearts and opening our minds.
Thank you for sharing that, Scott, because as a guy of Greek descent, I could actually picture the family and what they're like, and they're huddled around, just from my own ancestry and experience growing up that way. And that I have to say, I haven't quite heard a story like that where someone appears to multiple people like that. I mean, yeah, there are signs of, stories of visitations in lore and in many cultures, but I know you, and this is very personal. It happened to somebody I know, and like you said, the whole family saw that. What a gift. What I want to underscore about that is that I really believe that in our evolution as human beings to where we're going, to higher states and of refinement and love, someday I really understand from teachings that I follow that we will be able to interact with and see those who have dropped their cloak, dropped their bodies, as easily as you and I, all of us, are communicating here. And I just long for that day, because as I look around and see how much the pain of separation, or supposed separation, from our five senses is caused when someone dies, and it's a universal thing. It's happened to all of us. But imagine if the day will come that we've evolved to the point where those who have passed on are there and they can interact. We may be vibrating at different levels, but the infrastructure is now there for us to continue our communication. The fear of death, the threats of death and everything around it will totally blow our minds and be gone when that happens. And that's why your story has so much meaning for me. This might be a little bit off topic, but it's all part of the going within. We will discover what magnificent cosmic beings we are, and the fact that we have perceptions that we have not even tapped yet. And they will delight us in the same way that your story was a delight and a comfort, a relief to the people who were still trapped inside these bodies. Your Papu was basically saying, look what's possible. I came, I talked, I went. And if it happened once to you guys, it can happen to anybody all the time.
I love that.
The reason I brought it up briefly, and then I want to hear what Michelle has to say, is that the question was asked, how do people that are maybe haven't had contact with UFOs or ETs or are new to this? And almost everyone has had some kind of a mystical experience in their life.
Yeah.
It may be a Christian who sees Jesus and has a lucid dream about Jesus or Mary. For my Greek family, who definitely were not into UFOs, it was seeing Papu. Almost everybody has had something happen out of the ordinary. And so celebrate that. So that's actually why I brought that up.
I, what I'm really resonating with, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's really relevant to this conversation. And I'm loving how fluid this conversation is. It feels like we're bringing through messages as we're getting them. And that's the way I feel, things should be always. But I do want to share that I was married in Greece, Santorini, almost 30 years ago, in 1992. And have a deep, deep, deep connection with Greece. So I love hearing these stories. And what I want to just, piggyback on again to that, and how relevant it is to this conversation, is the multidimensionality of souls as we evolve and change our frequency and our consciousness. This is something that I think is on the hearts and minds of many, many people, especially right now. If we have lost in the last 2 years 800,000 people, they're really focusing on this number of people. We lose people constantly to this is the cycle of life. And the indigenous people know that, with birth, your death is a new birth. And they do believe that your soul goes on to, it's like a graduation of sorts. You're going on to your next assignment as a soul. Maybe some people don't agree with that philosophy, and that's okay if that doesn't fit. I'm not asking anyone to wear that, but I do want to share that 6 months after my father died, to the day, it was the day after my birthday, he appeared at the foot of my bed. And we had been talking about starting a nonprofit company called A Time for Change. My daughter was in high school at the time. And when my dad passed, he left like 350 watches. They weren't like Rolex watches or anything like that. My dad obviously had a thing where he loved watches. And his father had a thing around time as well. He had cuckoo clocks all over his house. So I find it interesting that this kind of played into my dynamic about time. And it came to me that if my daughter wanted to start a nonprofit called A Time for Change, we had donated some of his watches to my Peruvian brother, who, they didn't, some of the boys and girls that I met in Peru when I went, I've been there 4 times, they see that they saw that watch as a symbol of their success or their worth. Again, this thing with worthiness. I gifted the watch to Washi, one of my Peruvian brothers, and he said, "It makes me feel important wearing Jack's watch." And I thought, wow, what if other kids in orphanages wanted to feel important and we could gift them watches? That could be a whole nonprofit. It wasn't something I wanted to undertake myself, but I said to my daughter, if you want to try this, maybe, you could take grandpa's watches and start a nonprofit. When my dad appeared at the foot of my bed, he told me, he telepathed again. It's not with the mouth. He did it through just the contact and the vibration. And he said, I approve of that idea for Nikki to do that with my watches. And I was like, wow, Dad, you're at the foot of my bed. This is what a trip, and I think of all the things I wanted to ask him, but he just disappeared at that point. It was just for that one message. About 3 minutes later, my daughter walked into the room to wake me up and say, "Mom, you got to take me to school." And I tell her, "Grandpa was just at the foot of my bed." And she jumped back. And I said, "No, it's not scary. It's not scary. It was very loving. And he had a message for you." And I delivered the message. Right after I delivered the message, my phone rang, and it was my middle brother, Robert. And he said, "Shell, you're not going to believe this. Dad just came to me." And I said, "Hey, Rob, where were you when Dad came to you?" And he said, "In the shower." And I asked him what he was thinking, what Dad's message was. It was very personal, and it made so much sense. And this was my doubting Thomas kind of brother who didn't really believe in all this kind of stuff, that Dad was appearing and coming to me, in many different ways. And he now believed because my father appeared to him. And then I said, he just came to me too. And he got kind of irritated. Dad, well, he was just with me. And so I handed the phone to my daughter, Nikki, and I said, tell Uncle Rob what I just told you. And she relayed the story with me not prompting her or anything. And then Rob said, well, what does that mean? How did he come to you and me at the same time? And I said, Robert, he's showing us what it's like when you're not in the body. You don't have the density of the body. You can be in multiple places at the same time. That's what happens when we're in our light body, in our spirit body. And it gave him so much peace. And it gave me peace and my daughter peace. And while many people are going through the devastating losses that they're going through right now, with many family members dying of heart attacks and strokes and all sorts of things, cancers, and there's a lot of reasons why people are leaving the earth plane right now. And it's not just because of what we're, really focused on. There's a lot of different reasons people are leaving. This is a time where many souls are choosing to take the exit. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's sad for those of us left behind that are so attached to that physical body. And death has kind of become like the elephant in the room. It seems like in many of the indigenous cultures, they revered death. They understood that, this is a cycle. So I do think this is another teaching moment to help people and invite people to come into that place of open-heartedness and wonder and curiosity at what does happen when our body decides to expire. We get a new one, or we have a new assignment. We graduate.
Very cool. Thank you, Michelle. I have a final question for you guys to close this off, and it's something that I feel strongly as well. It's tied to what we were talking about before about the tools, because my previous question was more about how do you get through enlightenment? Like, so the answers were, well, coaching, there's a bunch of resources online, it's easier than ever to get resources, to help become enlightened and a better person. But some of my projects are in other parts of the world. Like one of them is in Uganda, for example, right now. And it so happens that a very small percentage of the population has access to the internet. And basically they're living like we used to live pre-internet today, right? So the access to information is still just like it was when we were growing up, us all, because we're a little bit older, right? Where it's only the family, it's immediate, right? The world is not accessible. And you're talking about 40% of the population of the earth that is in that situation where there's barely no or no, not at all, in access to internet or resources.
Can you tell us what your project is there?
Quite simply, we're building we're testing an innovation for e-learning, specifically for the teachers there that need to upgrade their education to a bachelor's degree. And in particular the women, because of cultural differences, they don't have access and they are discouraged to continue their education. So there's more to it, but it's not the topic of this talk. But that's one of the things.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So that's why I really care, because I'm in that space where people, 40% of the population that doesn't have access to information that most people do. So they can't see this video, for example, right? So what do we do? And for sure, we know that between now and 2030-ish, there's going to be a lot of that proportion that will be on the web. So access to knowledge and wisdom from everywhere. But do we have any ideas of how can we access all those people and to put them more speedily on the path of enlightenment and growth and becoming better people, and kind of getting out of their of the way of thinking that is encapsulated in their neighborhood and somewhat primitive cultures sometimes, because they're not connected with any other cultures elsewhere. So what are your thoughts about all these disconnected individuals that are not part of the web? Is there some thoughts towards that? Go ahead.
We have what I like to think of as a ripple effect. Those of us who are fortunate enough, I believe, to live in electronically enabled societies, so that we have access to this information and to each other. You can think of ourselves as being like at the center of your own universe, and ripples go out from you. You may know a circle of people around you, they know the next circle, and on, like ripples in the pond spreading out. So what I'm trying to say is, I personally don't know directly how I can reach into another part of the world that is not accessible by my keyboard here, but I know people who know other people, and somewhere out there, I have faith that if we can propagate the wave of love through our circles, through our ripples, a way will be found to reach those who maybe don't have the electronic means. What that is, I don't know. Someone may come in and wire, as you were saying, in 10 years, Sylvain, the internet may be wired, but until then, you make a good point, or ask a good question. How do we reach people? And my answer, the best answer I have, is a friend of a friend of a friend will find a way. These degrees of separation that will work in a positive way to reach those people. So what I guess I'm saying is I'm just having faith that way will be found. And it's important to have the intention. And the fact that you brought this up, and that's an excellent question, because we're living in a privileged part of the world where we can take for granted that we have these instantaneous means of communication, but keeping in mind that that's not the case everywhere. So I have faith that a way will be made, as long as we have the intention that we do want to push the knowledge out there. In the same way that miracles seem to happen with someone showing up at your door or at the foot of your bed, you can still hold that intention that the information that we want to send out will reach those who currently don't have the technologies we have. So my answer is faith right now. If anybody has anything more specific and physical plane oriented, that would be good. But faith, as they say, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And I work with it a lot.
Michelle?
It's an interesting question. I loved what Costa said as far as his answer goes, and totally see that. And I invite us to consider a different side of that. And that is that many of those people in the indigenous communities never lost the connection. They've always communicated with the stars and the trees. And in my opinion, most of them are more enlightened than any of us that are using this technology. I don't mean to be putting anybody down in any way, but I think our connection with nature is the true source of enlightenment. And I have to admit, I love using my technology. It serves me well. I'm very grateful for it. I wouldn't be able to be here, like you said, with all of you, or you with your program. What an incredible program that you're running there. And so I understand that side of it as well. And that's why I think it was kind of difficult for me to decide, how do I answer this when, those redwoods communicated with me and told me, come to us, we will heal you. How did I hear that message? It wasn't through my computer. So I think there's lots of different ways to look at, how we become enlightened, I guess. I don't ever consider myself enlightened. I feel like that's what this whole Earth School is all about. We're all, my radio partner Eric Rankin is always quoting somebody that talks about how we're all students and we're all teachers, and in the key is in finding out which one are we in which moment. I feel like we've all been that, both sides of that in this conversation, and just recognizing that and honoring that as well. But I love that Costa, brought the faith piece in. If technology is needed for those people, for that purpose, that it will find a way to them.
Scott, closing thoughts?
Michelle went exactly in the direction I wanted to take it. That's exactly where I wanted to go. So I guess I'll just riff on it a little bit. My favorite nonprofit organization, I've been working with them and supporting it for a long time, is the Pachamama Alliance. And Lynn Twist and her husband Bill had a vision. And it was a vision of people somewhere in South America that were calling to them. And the vision was so clear that they saw very specific paint on the faces. And they went to an anthropologist or someone who understands, and that person was able to determine which tribe it was. They went down and found the tribe, and they formed the Pachamama Alliance. And the main point Lynn always points out is, it's not about us as wealthy white people coming down there to give them what they're missing. They have what we're missing. They have the wisdom that we need. We need them way more than they need us. And they sent the message, not, oh, white people come save us, but it was like, it's time for the North and the South to come together to create peace and to learn and to create a new dream together. Because the current dream of material commercial man, which includes that, yes, we have computers and all this technology, is destroying the planet. And they are protectors of the planet. So may we spend more time in nature. May we learn, and like Michelle said, indigenous people. Now, of course, there are semi-enlightened people that are in the material world, and there's semi-enlightened people in the indigenous world, and there are really creepy people in the material world, and there's probably pretty creepy people in the indigenous world. But yeah, that's where I wanted to go with that. And one final thought. Everybody and everything is a sacred mirror. Everything. There's only one of us here having this incredible cosmic dream in which we have imagined ourselves as 8 billion human beings currently living in this particular reality. And quantum physics teaches us that there are multiple dimensions and multiple realities. And someday on another show, I can talk about when I actually woke up in a different reality of Scott Thomas, a different life path that I took. So it's big. It's really big. And it's all God, life experiencing itself. And I believe that life, God, whatever you want to call it, wants to experience everything it can imagine. And there is no good, there is no bad, there is no right, there is no wrong, there's no evil. There's the perception of all those things. And we have to set boundaries, and we have to, of course, but everything's a mirror. So what turns us on? What wakes us up? Who are the teachers? Who are the people? And maybe somebody watching this show, some people go, I love Michelle, but the guy with the long hair, and other people go, oh my God, I loved Costa. And that's okay too, right? We all resonate and relate to who we resonate and relate to. But like Costa said, there's amazing teachers out there that we can have access to. Michelle has them every week on her radio show for 10 years. She's been doing that. I've got them on my show every weekend. And we're all waking up together. We are the imaginal cells of the butterfly that's emerging from the dying caterpillar. The old paradigm is dying, and death is scary. And birth is messy, but we are in the birth canal. We are the imaginal cells finding each other, creating the new world, creating a new paradigm. So those are my final thoughts.
Fantastic. I was hoping you guys would go there, and you did. You do not disappoint. And you get descriptions for all three organizations and these three wonderful people. You can go visit their links. You can connect with 1, 2, or 3, whichever matches your vibe, right, and where you are, and connect and join the discussion and the beauty of the different groups, and bring your color to it. And then you can teach those groups about you and how you perceive the universe, right? And thank you to our 3 guests, Costa, Scott, Michelle. Well, it's time to part ways. Thank you. I need to show you this because I need to share the spotlight. Michelle is showing the Be Good Humans Awakening Code Radio. Yes, indeed. There you go. Thank you so much.